Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. It is one of those things that many of us don't think about. We don't talk about it until we're presented with the cost of it, and that is the cost of aging. Many expenses involved, almost to the point where you can't even plan for the future, but you really should. We're going to talk about that today, and she is the woman behind a center that's basically a gateway for health, beauty, wellness, and aging services. It's a wonderful facility in New Mexico, the Center for Ageless Living, and she's the founder. Suzette Lindemuth joins us again here on the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I hope everybody else is too.
This is one of those topics that people don't really talk about. Planning for the future, planning as you get older, and making it so it's affordable to grow old. Honestly, I don't even know where to start on this today.
Well, I think it's one of those topics like death. Money is just something that's hard to talk about. And costs obviously have gone up substantially. And when you talk about, can you really afford to grow old? And I would have to say, no. If you think that growing old means becoming needy and dependent and needing care, I think you really need to step back and say, what can I do today to stay healthy, not only physically, mentally, and spiritually, but financially? And I think those are all challenges that we face. So I think it's an interesting topic to delve into. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about how insurance works and how the government programs are helping and what all that looks like.
It is almost to the point where I venture to say that you might even need to hire somebody to help you figure this all out. Like you said, there's so many different pieces of the pie, the aspect of it, where funds could become available. Then, of course, you're looking at Social Security. Many are delaying that so they can get the most return on that. Then there's fears that it may go away anyway, depending on how old you are at this time. Let's talk about the government. What is available that we might not be aware of?
Well, I think statistically, I think it's important to kind of look at, how fast the population's growing. I pulled up some numbers this morning. In 2022, there was 22.2 million people, over the age of 75. And that number is just, growing so quickly as the baby boomers are hitting that number. We know that when you hit 65, we have Medicare. Everybody, I think, appreciates Medicare. People really love Medicare. But Medicare is a major health insurance program. It does not pay for any long-term care. There are lots of different types of Medicare programs, obviously, and I'm not a Medicare specialist, but there are Medicare Advantage programs, there's Medicare Plus programs, and these are all programs that managed care organizations, which in every state, there are huge managed care organizations, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Presbyterian, Aetna, and they take your Medicare and they blend it with their resources and come up with these packages of health care. So again, some of them have very limited assistance, like maybe you can get home delivered meals if you are in a rehab setting and going home from rehab and need help. So there are little parts of the Medicare program that pay for short-term, what people misunderstand as long-term care. So if you have a hip surgery, a hip replacement, and you have to go to rehab to develop strength again, you can have up to 21 days, up to 100 days, whatever your policy says in rehab, and that will be paid under a Medicare premium. But once that's gone, it does not carry over into your home in terms of a long-term care program. Now, a lot of people say, it's going to pay for home health care. That is true. Medicare will pay for a short period of time in your own home, maybe skilled nursing, PT, OT, speech. They will send an aide in for a short period of time. But again, these are short-term programs that help with what we call, acute cases. These are not chronic long-term care needs. So there is a big difference, and people misunderstand it all the time. I have people call me every day. They say, well, I have Medicare. What does Medicare pay for assisted living? No, it doesn't pay for assisted living. It doesn't pay for a nursing home. So I think that's one big fallacy people just have to get out of their head is that somehow they're Medicare insurance. Now, I will say that during the Obama years, under the Medicare, there was a small provision that they were going to add that Medicare was going to handle some long-term care at a certain rate. Of course, that got pulled out of the Affordable Health Care Act, and that's not an option. But that may be something as we look at how are we going to change our health care strategies to be able to support people. Is that something that's ever going to be supported by the government? I really don't know. But it is something that many people think that Medicare is going to pay for it.
There's a lot of misconceptions out there about insurance, especially Medicaid, right?
Well, Medicaid, we can jump into Medicaid. So Medicaid is very different than Medicare. Yeah. So Medicaid is your government assistance program for low-income elders. And every state has different Medicaid programs. So when Medicaid came around, and to be honest, I don't know the exact date that institutional Medicaid was formed, but it was probably in the 50s and the 60s. So institutional Medicaid was developed by the federal government to help individuals that could no longer live alone. They really need medical attention in a nursing home facility. The nursing home industry boomed. The federal government paid states and providers through the federal Medicaid program. It was an entitlement program, which meant that if you were entitled to it, you would get it. It was called the safety net. And Medicaid has a financial requirement and a medical requirement. So you have to meet both levels to qualify. Institutional Medicaid's been around a very long time. You know, it's changed a little bit over the years, but not much. And then about I'd say the late 80s, 1990, states said, nursing homes are so expensive. They've gone up at the rate of like 4.5% every year. The average cost right now is $116,800 for a private pay nursing home facility for private rooms. I mean, that cost it's just so much money. And a lot of people were being sent to nursing homes really because of housing issues and not having any family support to provide even minimal help with what are called activities of daily living. So most states said, we want to look at community-based programs. How can we support our elders, our disabled in community? We don't think that everybody should be in a nursing home. The nursing home model is a medical model. We want a social model. So there was a big drive, and here in New Mexico, I helped to serve on lots of committees in around 1990 through about 1995. We fought very hard to create what was called a waiver. And a lot of states have waivers. Oregon was the first state to have a waiver. And basically, it was a waiver that the federal government gave to states to use those federal dollars. Instead of a nursing home, you could waive it and you could use it in community-based programs. So lo and behold, we fought really hard to have assisted living as one of those entities that could be paid. That program continues to evolve in every state. It's a big drive now for person-centered care plans. We know a lot of individuals need supportive living but don't need the medical component of a nursing home. So those programs have really taken off, and assisted living is mostly private pay, but there are now a strong movement to continue to look at how to support low-income elders so they have an option for assisted living. So here in New Mexico, we fight it every year. We go to the state legislation. We beg for money so that we can make up that cost differential in assisted living. It's a challenge, but for many people, the assisted living or the non-medical homemaker program where people can stay at home and you can have a homemaker come in is really a really good alternative. Interestingly, the cost right now for assisted living versus non-medical homemaker coming into your home for maybe 4 hours a day is almost the same. It's about $68,000. I think right now the numbers are about $64,000 to $68,000 a year. But interesting enough, assisted living is 24-hour care. It also includes your housing, all your food, utilities, and everything. Whereas non-medical homemaker services are really, someone coming in for about 4 hours a day. So, when you look at the cost, it's just incredible that we have that big differential. So how that's going to change in the future, there's a huge push to continue to support community-based programs. And I urge everybody in your community to look at what those programs are.
I can't even process what you just said. That in-home care.
It's a lot of information.
No, but the in-home care for a few hours a day versus something that medical assistance in a facility is around the same price. Wow. People don't realize that.
Yeah, and a lot of people say, "Well, I want to stay home. I want to stay home." Everybody wants to stay home. I get that, but we're going to have to really look at cost. And as costs are going up so fast, there's just going to be a breaking point where it's just not going to be feasible to provide services in the home. I will say one thing that has happened, particularly in rural areas, and New Mexico has a lot of rural areas. It's called livable density. There's just not enough people to support assisted living in those communities. There's not enough staff to go out and do non-medical homemaker. There's just not enough people to support that type of care. So we as a nation, as communities, are going to have to say, what are going to be our best options? How are we going to put together these programs that are going to support people in a cost-effective way? And the costs are getting so expensive that even for myself in the industry, I say, how is that going to look? The old saying is when you don't have a lot of money, you end up living with a lot of people, you have very little privacy, and you eat a lot of rice and beans, because that's just how it is. And, that's why assisted living has become an affordable model, is because you have small groups of people living together in a residential setting, and they're sharing those costs. And that is an affordable model. Now, does everybody thrive in that environment? No. But it is a good, strong, affordable option. And I do think that you're going to see unique models of communal living continue to grow. And we see that here in New Mexico. We do have sort of small little communities that are rising up as sort of compounds. There's a lot of those in the cities where an apartment becomes very, a lot of elders all of a sudden turn the same age in an apartment complex, and they band together to bring in resources. And there's a sharing and a community approach. I think you're going to see those. There are a lot of those in the Boston area that are very successful. So I think you're going to see some unique programs come up because it's just not affordable.
We need something. It is, where are people going to live? It's one thing if you have a home, it's paid off. Okay, but there are many that don't. And because of life changes and such, we got a real challenge. The housing alone for any age is affordable housing is a big challenge in our country right now. Now add this.
Yes. And, the statistics are pretty, alarming when you think that, 40% of individuals over the age of 85 are going to need really assisted living or long-term care. I mean, most of us know that, 70% of people over the age of 65 need some assistance. Now, I'm over 65. I don't really think I don't need a whole lot of assistance, but I do have a housekeeper. I do have a somebody comes to do my lawn. So, I have help, and I think we all know that, we need to have help at some point. But, when you start to jump into that hands-on care with assistance with what are called the activities of daily living, bathing, dressing, mobility, toileting, showering, all of those things, you can see how expensive it gets. Right now, non-medical homemaker services are $25 to $28 an hour. Well, in 4 hours, you're way over, a number that makes sense. And so most people, I won't say, some people can afford it, obviously, but most people cannot afford 24-hour care with a non-medical homemaker program coming in. It's just astronomical, the cost. So the rule of thumb is that, if you need more than 4 to 6 hours a day of a non-medical homemaker program, you might want to look at assisted living. If you need help at night, if you're falling at night or you're getting up at night and you're confused, or, you really, your family doesn't feel like you're safe at night, or there's some issues, then again, we try to say, look at assisted living, because to have a 24-hour caregiver, around the clock becomes pretty not affordable.
Do you feel a lot of this is because our aging population is living longer and are relatively more healthier than they were back in the day?
Yes, absolutely. We're living longer and healthier. And I think that's the reality is that as the baby boomers are hitting 65, 75, that number, I mean, I forget the, I mean, it's just huge, the number of people that are going to be in that age bracket. And there is going to be a percentage of people that are just not going to be able to make it on their own. I mean, statistically, we know that. And, you know, I was looking at some numbers in terms of, you know, in 2021, only 47% of individuals over 75 were in the stock market. Now, I'm not saying the stock market is your only investment tool, but it is clearly one that you can generate income and not doing, you know, not doing a 9-to-5 job. I mean, we are working longer. I mean, many people are opting to, you know, work till they're in their 70s or at least work part-time into their 80s. You know, so that's helping a lot with the economy of aging. The other thing is that Medicaid, which again is a program for low-income elders, their eligibility is going up. So right now in New Mexico, and every state might be a little different, but in New Mexico right now, your monthly income to qualify for Medicaid is $2,901 a month. Well, that's pretty high for Social Security because most people are living off Social Security. So when you look at that amount of money, now I don't have a lot of people that come to me and are at that top level of Social Security, but it is interesting that Medicaid eligibility has continued to increase to try to close that gap because their Social Security amounts are getting higher. Now, again, your assets, you can't have assets. So you have to have less than $2,000 in assets, and that's not a lot of money. So, you know, you can't have stocks, bonds, you can't have life insurance that has cash value. You know, your home is exempt, you know, and your car is exempt. Your burial policy is exempt. Some of your VA aid and attendant benefits are exempt, and that's another program that I encourage people to look at if you are a veteran or you're a widowed spouse of a veteran. The VA does have what's called aid and attendant. That is a fund that helps to pay for non-medical homemaker services. It also helps to pay for assisted living. If you're in a nursing home, you cannot qualify for that. The nursing home exempts that. You cannot qualify for aid and attendant. And there are certain requirements. You have to have been a widowed spouse of somebody who served during active wartime. They don't necessarily have to have gone to war, but they have to have served during that active wartime. And all that information is on va.org or .gov. But I find it most helpful if you can go down to your VA counseling center. And almost every, you know, large community has one. We're fortunate here in Albuquerque. We have a VA hospital that has a counseling center right on the first floor of the hospital. We also have the regional office here for the VA benefits. And, you know, I go down there a lot with applications. Don't go down there unless you've got the right documents because they won't talk to you. So there are ins and outs of all these programs. You can hire geriatric social workers to help you navigate some of these things. I also encourage you to have a good financial planner, somebody who knows how to manage your assets so that if you do have to qualify, you can. And I think you have to internally have a talk with yourself and feel comfortable about what would you be comfortable in your lifestyle living. Like, I mean, if you can never imagine yourself in assisted living, then you probably need to think really clearly about where it is you want to live. When you get to that point where you can't, you know, I always tell people I'm so easygoing. I could live in a tent. Just put me out in the field. I mean, you know, you just have to have that ability to adapt. And some people just simply cannot. You know, if you're a high-rise person, you know, you don't ever want to be in a ranch-style house. These are things you have to kind of really analyze and then look at the cost of that. I mean, if you know assisted living is going to cost, I mean, right now it's costing about $70,000 a year, and you have so much money in a savings account, how long would it take you to go through that with your monthly income coming in? You know, when do you need to say, okay, I would have to apply for government benefits? You know, there are trusts that you can put some funds in, you know, disability trusts, those kinds of things that can be used to divert some money. Again, that's when you need assistance with a professional to decide how you manage your assets. I will tell you a funny story because long-term care insurance always comes up. Oh, should I get long-term care insurance? So I went out to see a gentleman, and he was in his 80s, and he was talking to me, and he said, he said, I have this policy. It's a long-term care policy. He said, and I've been paying into it for years. And he literally had paid in thousands of dollars because long-term care insurance is not cheap. So he had paid into this policy for years, and it was strictly for a nursing home. So he says to me, I would rather be dead than go to a nursing home. I said, well, it's interesting that you have paid all this money into a policy that you're now telling me you'd rather be dead than try to use. So I encourage him to call the insurance company and see if there were updates to that policy, because over the years, long-term care insurance policies have updated to include assisted living and non-medical. And so you rarely see long-term care policies that are just nursing homes, but the old policies were just that. They only paid for one level of care. Now they're very different. And so, but, don't get stuck into that, dilemma where you're paying for something and then you go, I'd rather be dead. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, it doesn't help to invest in something. There are annuities and life insurance annuities. Those are good plans, but earmark money, know where that money is that you're going to need for long-term care, and earmark that somehow in your planning so that you know what you're working with.
And as you said before, Suzette, hire a professional, even if you have to pay him a few dollars to help you navigate this. I could never do it. I mean, I never say never, but this is it's like a full-time job just to figure out what you're going to do in terms of finances when you get older. And there may be things that 80-year-old gentleman doesn't even realize that can be brought to light. But that's it. You need direction. Somebody can't just do this alone. Really do. Wow.
Yeah.
You deal with this on a
Lots
daily
of information
basis.
out there.
Yes. Well,
and I handle most of the financial planning of people that are coming into our program. I mean, and I always advise that they seek professional estate planning if they need it. Many people are coming to me with just their Social Security. They've already, they have a little bit of savings left and they're spending down, and, the Medicaid application and the VA application are fairly easy to do. I mean, I know you can hire somebody to do those applications, but they are, they're online, they're basic information. I've been stuck a few times on a few cases that I've just not been able to get through, but you can manipulate them typically with a social worker or a case manager's assistance. So talk to those professionals. Again, if you have assets and you have stocks and bonds and real estate, then you definitely have to have an estate planner. But again, if you have a lot of money, you probably feel a little more secure in your long-term aging needs. And so, I'm really talking about people that are sort of that, middle income person who has a little bit of money, but not a lot of money. And that's the challenge, if you're really poor, again, you can tap into all those programs pretty quickly, if you're really rich, you can obviously afford to pay for things, but sure. Most of us are right here, and it's a challenge. We have to be savvy about our money. We have to be savvy about aging. We have to look at what our community resources and our state resources and our federal resources are. And to be honest, it could all change in 4 years.
Yeah, yes, it could. What to say. Yeah. Well, then again, we said when we started that, and we don't do politics here, but there's many wondering.
I'm hoping it gets better.
Yeah, I don't care who does it. Make it better. and
that's right. That's exactly right.
Just do the right thing for all. That's it. So much to navigate. Thank you for breaking down a great portion of this. What's the website for the center?
So it's nmagelessliving.com. You can email me your comments, concerns, questions, Suzette, Suzette, at nmagelessliving.com. And remember, agelessness is a way of living, so we embrace that.
Absolutely. And embrace the future. Got a plan. That's what that's the common denominator. Suzette, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
You got it. We'll be right back.
Agelessness, the art of growing old without regard to time. The Center for Ageless Living is your gateway to health, beauty, wellness, and aging services. We are located in the heart of Valencia County at 5 Thomas Road in Los Lunas, New Mexico. The center is located on a 6-acre campus committed to creating a community around aging gracefully. Visit us online at nmagelessliving.com for more information.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her?
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge?
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend?
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.